Okay, we're up to Daf Kuf Yud Ches Amid Aleph, a few lines into the page, Tanan Hasam. Just to review what the Gemara is dealing with today, is there's two different types of tumah. There's called tumas eichlin, which is that food can be susceptible to tumah as long as it came in contact with a liquid. It can be susceptible to tumah. And there's called tumas nevela, which is that a nevela is itself tameh. And there are certain differences. But what we're going to focus on today is a yad and a shomer. We said yesterday a shomer is whatever protects the food or protects the nevela. So the skin with the nevela or a shell with food. That's the yad, that's the shomer. And the yad is whatever you use to help you pick it up to eat it. So a bone could be, pick up the bone to eat the meat. That would be a yad. And by food, the yad would be, let's say, the spine, not the spine, the top of the apple. The stem, you can pick it up to eat off it. So we said that a yad and a shomer for nevela and tumas eichlin, as we'll see, it brings tumah and extends tumah. What do I mean? What I mean is like this. Let's say a dead body touches the stem of an apple, which touches the yad. So the apple is not tameh. That's bringing tumah in. Same thing with a nevela. And it's also moitzi tumah. What do I mean? If, let's say, an apple's tameh and it touches some other food, but the apple didn't touch, the stem touched, or the shell touched, the shomer and yad are able to extend tumah as well. That's true by food and that's true by nevela. The only difference is that a shomer is able to be mitzdarif to the shear. It's able to be combined to the shear for tumas eichlin, but not tumas nevela. That was all kind of what we said yesterday, and the Gemara it's going to pick it up. So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says, Tanan Hasam, Kol shu yad v'loy shomer, anything attached to food that's a yad and not a shomer, so it's used to help you eat the food. Tameh, it acquires tumah, meaning that if something tameh touches the yad, the food is tameh. Umetameh, and it could extend tumah, that's called machnis and moitzi. It's machnis tumah in. That means that if you touch the yad, the fruit is tameh. It's machnis the tumah. It's moitzi the tumah, that if that fruit is tameh already, and someone touches the yad, the person is now tameh. But ve'ein mitzdarif. But the yad is not mitzdarif. Only the shomer is mitzdarif, not the yad. The yad cannot be combined to the shear, to the requisite shear of a kebeya in order to transmit tumah. But shomer, aval b'shen yad, tameh u'metam mitzdarif. Shomer by food, not by nevela. Shomer by food is mitzdarif as well. Now, something that's lo yad v'lo shomer, something that's a part of the apple that's neither a yad or a shomer. So let's say it's a bone, but you can't use it to pick up the food. So it's not a yad, not a shomer, and it's not edible. Lo tameh v'lo metame. It doesn't bring in tumah. It doesn't extend tumah. It's nothing. It's an irrelevant factor for our discussion. Okay, so we have a concept that a yad is machnis tumah and moitzi tumah by food. So it brings tumah in, and it extends tumah as well. And the question is, what is the source? Yad is heicha ksiva. So the Gemara says, because yesterday we had a pasuk that the shomer is mitzdarif. That we had yesterday. That was from kol zera zeru asher yizareya. The shomer is mitzdarif by food. But we have to have a source. What we're going to do today is, what's the source that a yad is machnis tumah and moitzi tumah? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why, because there's a pasuk. V'chiyuten ma'im al zera v'nafal nivlasam alav. That if water falls on food, and then a nevela touches the food, tameh hu lachem. It's tameh. Now the word lachem is extra. Lachem l'chol shabetzechem. Lachem means any part of the food that you use for your tzarech, i.e. a yad, also is able to mekabel tumah. So this is a source that yad is machnis tumah. That if something tameh touches the yad, it's tameh. L'Rabbi said yadis. That's one source by food. We're looking for machnis and moitzi. So the Gemara says there's another pasuk. Now this second pasuk is not by food, but it's nevela. It's by nevela, and the Gemara understands at this point that as long as you have a pasuk for a yad for tumah, so it all you could take it from nevela and apply it to food. It says v'chiyamus mirabehem ashi lachem. The word lachem l'chol shabetzechem l'rabas is a yados. That pasuk is obviously referring to being motzi tumah because a nevela is already tameh. So it's referring to extending tumah. That if you touch the yad of a nevela, you're now tameh as well. So that's a second pasuk. So we have one pasuk by yad for food. We have a second pasuk by yad for nevela. So we apply them both to food. That yad by a food is lahachnis or lahoitzi. Because we assume that the word yad, the concept of yad by nevela is extra. That's the Gemara's presumption, and therefore it's used for food. So you have yad to be machlis and to be moitzi. Shomer lahachnes lahoitzi. Now, what about a shomer? That the shomer can bring in tumah and bring out tumah. We said that we could. The only addition is that a shomer can also be mitzdarif. So we have a pasuk for yad. Shomer we have for mitzdarif. So the Gemara says, okay, shomer lahachnes lahoitzi leitzachkra. You don't need a pasuk that a shomer could extend tumah or bring tumah in. Meaning, if you touch the shomer of a fruit and you're tamei, of course the fruit's tamei. I don't need a pasuk for that. Why? My yad sheina magina machnesu moitzi shomer lekoshkin. If a yad which doesn't even protect the food can be machnes tumah moitzi tumah kavachomer a shomer, which is more integral to the fruit. If the yad which is just the stem can bring tumah in and extend tumah kavachomer shomer. So yad source for machnes check, moitzi check. Shomer is going to learn that from a yad, and shomer you have in mitzdarif. We had the pasuk yesterday. Shomer the kasach min alam lishma min l'tzarif. There you go. That is the source for everything. Now, the Gemara says, here's the issue. We have two psukim by yad, machnes and moitzi, perfect. But it's not true. There's one pasuk by a yad for food, and one pasuk by a yad for nevela. We're just putting it together. The Gemara says, maybe that's not true. Eme yad lahachnes, v'loy lahoitzi. Maybe the pasuk by yad is talking about being machnes tumah, and not being moitzi tumah. Meaning, maybe let's not put the psukim together. The yad for nevela, we don't count. That's talking about nevela. Don't put it together. Let's just focus on food. All we have is one pasuk, which is that it's machnes tumah. We don't have a source that it's moitzi tumah. We apply the pasuk by nevela, but who says you can? So all we have is a pasuk to be moitzi tumah. I'm sorry, to be machnes tumah, that it's able to metame, that if you touch the yad, the fruit is tameh. Who's to say that if the fruit is tameh, that the yad will extend the tumah as well? Shomer lahachnes lahoitzi, have a yad lahoitzi, v'shomer l'tzaref loy. We don't have a pasuk for yad to be moitzi, and therefore we don't have a pasuk for shomer to be mitzdarif. The only reason why we had a pasuk for shomer to be mitzdarif is because the yad covered both, and the shomer is learned that from a yad. But if you're missing in yad, that means you're missing in a shomer. So how do you know that a yad could be moitzi tumah? So the Gemara says, well, it's pretty pashut. If a yad is able to bring tumah onto the fruit, to create tumah on the fruit, of course it could extend tumah. That's pretty obvious. So says the Gemara, yad lahachas v'lohoitzi le'matzis amrit hashayuli maili afuki miboy. If I have a pasuk, we do have one pasuk for yad, for food, to be machnes tumah. That's all you need, because if it's able to be machnes tumah, kavachomer could be moitzi tumah. So the Gemara says, okay, well maybe the yad by food is not to be machnes, it's just to be moitzi. Ve'im yad lahoitzi v'loy lahachnes shomer lahoitzi lahachnes of yad lahachnes shomer l'tzaref loy. We have one pasuk by food, by yad. Maybe it's not to be machnes, because if it's machnes, then I could figure out moitzi very simply. Maybe yad is referring to being moitzi tumah, but we don't have a source that yad is machnes tumah. Now there is one issue. The pasuk by yad is talking about being machnes tumah, but the Gemara says maybe it's not. Well, it is. Maybe it means to be moitzi. It doesn't. The Gemara eventually will say, right, the pasuk said that if water, the pasuk by yad is that if water gets on seeds, and then an avela touches the seeds, the yad of the seeds, the seeds are tameh. Pretty pasha that it's talking about being machnes tumah, but the Gemara says maybe it's talking about being moitzi. Which again, like I said, at the end of the Amid, the Gemara will say that's not what the pasuk is referring to. But we got to get there. So the Gemara says, okay, so what's the evolution? We're looking for yad to be machnes tumah, to be moitzi tumah by food. So the Gemara says, well, we have one pasuk. But yeah, but maybe it's just talking about moitzi, not machnes. So there is another yad pasuk that's by nevela, but we don't want to apply that now. The Gemara says, well, there's a third. There's one by food. There's one by nevela, and there's one by tanurim. That if tanur is tameh, and the yad of the tanur touches someone, then the person is tameh. So we have food, nevela, and kalim. So take the one by kalim and apply it to food. Yad lahachnes lahoitzi. The Gemara says yad yisei ksiv. Tanur v'kiraim yutatz lachem. It says again in the pasuk lachem. Lachem l'chol shebetzechem, which is referring to yad l'rabas yados. So we have yad by kalim. So, okay. So the Gemara is basically saying, you have yad by food, you have yad by nevela, you have yad by kalim. Take one of them and apply it to food. We're looking for two by food. Lahachnes lahoitzi. So we have one, but we said maybe that's talking about moitzi. So I'm looking for lahachnes. So the Gemara is saying, well, take one. One of them's got to be extra. I don't need yad by all three categories. So one of them is extra, put it to food. The Gemara says, well, which one is extra? Who says that one of them is extra? Maybe I need to teach me yad by kalim. Maybe I need to teach me yad by nevela and yad by food. Who says one of them is extra? Which one is extra? Well, The Gemara says, "Well, lichta rachmana b'zroim v'leisi hanech menayu." Why can't I just have the one by food and the other two yadis are extra? But they're not. You can't learn out from food. Malazram shekin tumasa meruba. Food is different than the other two categories. Why? Because they contract tuma from a rishon. Food is very easy to contract tuma. Even a rishon can make food a sheni and a shlishi and a revi, all that stuff. But nevela doesn't. First of all, nevela is tame, but a keli is not makabel tuma from rishon. It has to be from an avatuma. So you can't learn out kalim from food. Well, lichta rachmana b'tanur v'leisi hanach b'nayu. Maybe just say yad by food, by the oven, and maybe the food one and the nevela are extra. You can't. Malatana shekem in tam maviro. Kalim tanur is different because there's a special halacha that it's makabel tuma even without contact. As long as the tame item in a kli cheres, in a tanur of cheres, if the tame item is extended inside the airspace, all of a sudden the tanur is tummy without physical contact. That's unlike the other two. Maybe write it by nevela and learn the other two from nevela. You can't. Nevela is different. It's able to actually mitama people. Right? If a person touches a nevela, the person is tame. If a person touches fruit, the person's not tame. If a person touches in tanur, the person's not tame. So nevela is different than the rest. And not only is it mitama people, it's mitama by someone carrying it, even if they don't touch it. If there's something in between, they're still tame. Also, the nevela is itself tame, as opposed to the fruit and the tanur, which had to be makabel tuma from a different source. So the Gemara says, so basically your premise is that you're taking one of them, none of them are extra. So says the Gemara, I lost Zoom for a second. We'll see if that picks up. So the Gemara says, the truth is, this is a source for Arla that I had the Zoom going and then the Zoom dropped. The truth is, we're trying to figure out whether one of the others are extra. So the Gemara says, well, maybe if I have two, I could learn a third from. I can't learn out two from one, but maybe I could learn out one from two. So maybe one of them is extra. Which one? Maybe I should be able to... See. Maybe I should be able to... Let's say I don't write the yad by food. I just have nevela and tanur. Can I learn out the food from the other two? Maybe the food is extra. The Gemara says no. Those two are unlike food in that food needs to come in contact with a liquid. It needs like a hachana in order to makabel tuma. A nevela doesn't have to do anything. It is tameh. A tanur doesn't have to do anything. It's able to makabel tuma, right? The only one that needs like hachanas, like prerequisites, is food. So the food is not like the other two, so it can't be learned out from the other two. So the Gemara says, well, it's not really true. The tanur also has to go through a prerequisite. You say, what do you mean? It doesn't have to come wet. Yeah, but it has to be finished, right? If you have an unfinished oven, it's not makabel tuma. It has to be finished. Like, go to the store and buy it. It's done. So food has to come in contact with liquid. It's finishing. Okay, so the Gemara says, well, it is similar in that regard. The Gemara says, okay, so how do I know? We're trying to prove that all three are needed. None of them are extra. And we're trying to figure out, can I learn out the food from the other two? So the Gemara says, you can't learn out the food from the other two. The food has to come in contact with a tumah. The other two don't. Why? Nevela doesn't have to come in contact with a tumah because it is tameh. The tanur doesn't have to come in contact with a tumah because as long as something in the airspace, it's tameh. So they're technically able to become a tameh without touching another item, as opposed to the food, which has to touch the actual tumah itself. The Gemara says, okay, I'm sorry. So I can't learn out food from the other two. So let's keep going. Okay, maybe don't write the yad by tanur and learn out tanur from the other two. The problem is you can't. The tanur is a kli. The other two are food. A nevela is a food. Food is a food. So you can't learn out a tanur, which is a kli, from oichel. Okay. Don't write it by nevela and learn it out from a tanur and a food. The problem is, yad de nevela. I'm sorry. The Gemara says, oh, that's a good taina. Don't write the yad by nevela and learn out from the other two. Yad de nevela lamali. So the yad by nevela is extra. Give it to food. So now I got two by food. One is to be machnis, one is to be moitzi. And shermilit sarif. The Gemara says, but that's not true. Akati yad nevela itzrich. I still need yad by nevela. Why? What's your alternative? I don't need yad by nevela. I can learn it out from food. The problem is if I learned it out from food, there's a concept called da'i levar min adin lias kenidan, which is that if you learn out from something, right? If I learn out A from B, then A is now limited and it can't be more severe than B. If nevela is learned out from food, then it can't be more severe than food, but it is. A nevela is able to be metama adam. Food is not. And if your nevela is learned out from food, then it should be limited. It can't be more severe than food. So I can't learn it out from food, because if I were to do so, it will be limited like food, and it will not be able to transmit tumah to people. The Gemara says, so the Gemara says, in other words, we're trying to learn out, we're looking for the source that yad is to be machnis and moitzi tumah. We have one by food, but we're saying that's only by moitzi, not being machnis. So we're looking for an extra one. So we thought maybe we could take it from nevela. No, it's needed. Take it from tanner. No, it's needed. So how do I know that a yad of food is able to bring in tumah and to transmit tumah? So the Gemara says, you're right. Yad by nevela is needed. But it says shoymer by nevela, that the fact that the shoymer can be tameh, that's unnecessary. Why? What's the one thing about a shoymer that we talk about is that it's mitzdaref. But it's not mitzdaref by nevela. It's only mitzdaref by food. A shomer by nevela, the fact that you tell me that the shomer, which is the skin of a nevela, is tameh, is unnecessary. And therefore, because it's unnecessary, right, the pasuk, I think it's, the pasuk is tameh yeh. Nevaslam, what was this? The pasuk said that the source, that shomer of nevela is benivla sa. Okay? That if you touch the skin of a nevela, you're tameh. That's the shomer. What do I need that for? The only thing that makes a shomer special is the fact that it's mitzdaref, but not by nevela, it's mitzdaref by food. Shomer by nevela is unnecessary. So what do you need this for? It must be the shomer by nevela is extra, put it by yad by food. By the way, the Gemara says, so you're taking shomer by nevela, and you're saying that pasuk is extra, so use it for yad by food, to be machnas and to be moitzi. El yad nevela mitzvah tzricha, v'shem de meihu do itzarech, l'mai hilchas ha'kasar rachmana. Why does the pasuk have to say this? Ilitz deruf ve'amar le'mitzdaref. Shomer is not mitzdaref by nevela. Ula hoitzi. And if it's to tell me that the shomer is able to transmit tumah, that if you touch the skin of a nevela, right, there's no machnis by nevela, it's already tumah. Moitzi, that it could extend tumah, it's pashit. Kal v'chomer miyadasi. You can learn that from a kal v'chomer. Elim eina in l'shomer de nevela, teneu in liyad nevela, ve'ein liyad nevela, teneu in liyad alma. So shomer by nevela is going to be basically used. It's turned into a yad, and yad, you don't need it by nevela, so give it to food. Okay. So now the summary is yad lahoitzi, yad lahachnis, v'shomer l'tzdaref. Okay. Go to the next page. So just to review, by food, yad is machnis tuma, yad is moitzi tuma, and a shomer is mitzdaref. I have one pasuk for yad. That's, we're saying, interpreting it to be moitzi. How do I know that yad is machnis? So that is learnt out from the shomer of nevela, which is extra. We're donating it to yad of being machnis by food. So says the Gemara, wait a minute. Ema im eina in l'shomer de nevela, tene in l'shomer de alma. How do you know that the pasuk, the shomer of nevela is extra? Why are you giving it as a yad for food? Shomer of nevela, give it to the shomer of food. That a shomer is able to be machnis and to be moitzi. The Gemara says, yeah. So the Gemara says, shomer lahachnis, the shomer l'tzaref. Maybe the pasuk is actually talking about shomer of food and it's to be machnis tuma. So how do you know? Right? Your whole point is you'll learn it out from yad. Maybe not. And maybe the shomer of nevela should be applied to shomer of food. The shomer l'tzaref, v'yav lahachnis loy. So we're back to the original question, which is, how do I know that a yad is machnis and moitzi? Although we have one yad, one pasuk by yad by food, but we're saying maybe it's talking about to be moitzi tumah, not to be machnis. The Gemara says, that's just not true. If you remember, we talked about this about 15 minutes ago. The pasuk of yad by food is talking about being machnis tumah. It's saying that if a nevela touches the yad of a seed, the seed is tameh. It's talking about being machnis. Don't tell me it's talking about moitzi. It's talking about being machnis. So you have one pasuk by food that it's machnis tumah. If it's machnis tumah, kal v'chomer, it's moitzi tumah. So you got machnis, you got moitzi, and now you're good. Says the Gemara, elami karaki ksiv yad achnos ksiv. Okay, perfect. So according to this, we don't need to take shomer of nevela and give it to yad. Yad is covered. You got one pasuk to be machnis, to be moitzi is kal v'chomer, it's posher. That if it's machnis tumah, it's moitzi tumah. And now shomer is good, not necessary, no problem. Says Gemara, well, now we have an extra word. Shomer of nevela, we said was extra. We were going to donate it to yad of food, but we don't need it anymore. So what is shomer of nevela doing? So the Gemara says, shomer de nevela amali legufe. It's just to tell you that a nevela could have a shomer, it can be tameh. The Gemara says it's pashit. We said before, it's pashit, l'mayl, it's tarufe, amayl, mitzdarf. What do you need shomer for? It's not mitzdarf anyway. What are you going to tell me? That if someone touches the shomer of a nevela, he's tameh. It's pashit. If a shomer by food is if able to transmit tumah, kavachomer shomer. Ilachnas kavachomer yadasi. Yeah, I'm sorry. If a yad is able to transmit tumah, kavachomer shomer is able to transmit tumah. So what do you need shomer by nevela for? The answer is you don't need it. Milsa daisi, but kavachomer tarach v'kasov l'kra. Sometimes things that are pashit that you learn from a kavachomer, the Torah is just matriach itself to write it. So says the Gemara. Well, if you're going to do that, ihachi shomer da'alma imalach lahachanes umilsa daisi but kavachomer tarach v'kasov l'kra. The whole premise of this is that everything is needed. Maybe shomer of a regular, right? We said there's an extra pasuk by shomer. Can't be to be machnis to be mitzi because you can learn it out from yad. What's shomer doing? It's being mitzdarif. Maybe not. Maybe it's not mitzdarif. You say, what do you need the pasuk for? Well, something that's pashut. Sometimes the pasuk just repeats. So the Gemara says, this concept of saying that milsa da'isa b'kava chomer tarach v'kasav l'kra, that's something that's obvious. The Torah might just write for no chiddush. That's a last resort. If we're able to darshan it differently, we do. One other Gemara, the Gemara gives another answer. We had before, we're trying to figure out yad. So we said yad to be machnis, yad to be moitzi. We were missing for yad to be machnis. At one point, we tried to take it shomer of nevela and then give it to yad to be machnis. And the Gemara says, why would you do that? Take the shomer of nevela, even though it's extra, give it to shomer of a regular food, not a yad. So the Gemara says no. Shomer of nevela is much more like a yad. Why? What's the major difference in yad and shomer by food? Shomer is mitzdarif for the shear, yad is not. By nevela, the shomer is not mitzdarif. So by a nevela, the shomer is actually more yad-like. So if there's an extra shomer by nevela, it makes more sense that it should be given as a yad to food than to a shomer of food. The Gemara says, "Chaviva meshani shomer de nevela kiven the ma'isa yad ka'avid ayad shadinalei." Okay, what was the source that a shomer is mitzdarif? So we said yesterday, because this is the end of yesterday's daf. We said the pasuk says by food, it says al kol zera zeru asher yizareya, right? Any carcass that the carcass touches the seed, so the seed is tameh. What part of the seed? So the Gemara says, well, how do you plant? When you eat the inside. You remove the shell. But when you plant, it says zareya. When you plant the whole seed with the shell. So it must be talking about a shell. So you're telling me the source of a shomer is dafka learned out because how you plant. So that would mean that if there's a shomer of a food, like a shomer of a pomegranate, you don't plant a whole pomegranate with the little crown on top, right? The crown on top is the shomer, right? So that means that the shomer, because it protects the top. So it should not be able to mitzdarif. Why? The whole source is from how you plant it. You don't plant a whole pomegranate, you plant a seed. Also, there's a shomer of nevela. You're not planting that either. Says the Gemara, Maskal Rav Yehuda bar Yishmael, Haditnana pitma shalrima mitzdarefes. The pitum of the pomegranate is the shomer. Haneit shaloi, but the top part, so the top crown is the shomer, but the little soft part on top of the crown is not. Fine, but the point is the top of the pomegranate is a shomer. But why? And it's mitzdaref. Amai. Kari kana kol zera zeru v'aleka. I thought the whole source of a shomer is how you plant it. There has to be that the shomer is only something that's planted in the ground. You don't plant the top of a pomegranate. So says the Gemara, Vasu, another question. Right? The skin of an animal is considered, right? It could be the skin of an animal is considered by let's say it's not an avela, it's a skin of a chicken, whatever, skin of a cow, kosher cow. You cut it up, so that's the shomer, and it's able to mitzdarif for the shear. What do you mean you don't plant it? Minalan. So the Gemara says you're right. We split up the pasuk. We split the pasuk into three parts. I'll call zera zaru asher yizareya. 3. Chad l'shemed izroim. 1 is the shomer of edible seeds. Chad l'shemed ilanis. 1 is the shomer of all foods, even when not planted. And either shomer l'basar salim v'dagim. The third one is the shomer of proteins. So 1 is for edible seeds that you plant. The second one is for foods b'chlal, and a fruit b'chlal, even if you don't plant. And the third one is any shomer, even of proteins. Okay, just to finish up. last bit of the sugya. We said that there's a yad for tumah, right? That means that if something tummy touches the yad, the fruit is tummy. Here's the question, though. We know that for a fruit to become susceptible to tumah, it has to come in contact with a liquid. Let's say the water didn't touch the food; it just touched the yad. Does that make the fruit mekabel tumah? A roy lekabel tumah? If the fruit already became wet, and I'm tummy, and I touch the yad, the fruit is tummy, because the yad is an extension. For tumah, the question is, what about for the liquid? If the liquid just touched the yad, does that make the whole fruit susceptible to tumah or not? So Amar Rav Chia bar Rashi Amar Rav, yesh yad l'tumah ve'in yad l'hechsher. No, yad is not significant for hechsher. For hechsher tumah, touching the yad is not significant. Rav Yechon Amar yesh yad l'tumah l'hechsher. Rav Yechon says no. If there's a yad for tumah, there's a yad for hechsher as well. So if the liquid, if rain touches the yad, the stem of the apple, even if it doesn't touch the apple itself, the apple is now susceptible to tumah. It's a machlekes. But Ma'ika Miflagi, what's the machlekes based on? Ibai say Masrara, Ibai say Makra. It's based on psukim and it's also based on logic. Ibai say Makra. First of all, it's based on pasuk. Here's the flow of the pasuk. The first pasuk is talking about getting wet with liquid. The next pasuk is tuma. The third pasuk is yad. So the yad is definitely juxtaposed to tuma. So that's why yad is tuma. The question is, do you go back two psukim? Right. So you have pasuk 1, 2, and 3. 2 and 3 are connected. The question is 3 and 1 connected? 3 is the yad. 1 is becoming liquid. Is coming in contact with liquid for hechsher. So one opinion says mikra nidish lefanav lefnei fanav, that you could darshan a pasuk 3 to 2 and then 3 to 1. So there is a yad for hechsher tuma. And one opinion says mikra nidish lefanav v'loy lefnei fanav. You don't go two psukim back. That's one version of machlokes. So Ibn Misvar could be a logic. Rabbi Yechon says, well, hechsher is part of tumah. It's the first step of tumah. So if yad is significant for tumah, it's significant for hechsher as well. And Rav holds no. They're completely two different sugyas. There's hechsher, and then there's tumah. For yad, it's significant for tumah, but it's not significant for hechsher tumah. Tan kevas Rav Yechonon. We have a brisa that backs up Rav Yechonon. Tan kevas Rav Yechonon. That said that a yad is significant for hechsher. Kashem sheyesh yad l'tumah, kach yesh yad l'hechsher. Beforish. Kashem sheyesh mekabel tumah hechsher yitoshu. And just like a mekabel tumah until it's detached from the ground, it can't be mekabel tumah while it's attached to the tree. Kachem mekabel hechsher l'idei tlishu. So too, it doesn't matter when it gets wet. It has to get wet only after it's detached from the tree. I will stop here. I'll pick it up tomorrow. Position.